Italy is one of the true Eurovision powerhouses, and they look like they could be doing it again. They're sending a returnee, Marco Mengoni, to the contest with Due Vite, but will Marco Mengoni be Mengona to the top of the leaderboard? Let's go Eurovision. Yeah, it feels hard to believe that it's already 10 years since Marco Mengoni last competed in Eurovision. He was there in the top 10 in Malmö in 2013 with L'Essenziale. He's trying again this year in a very, very competitive Sanremo. Quite convincingly won it. He's Italy's choice. Here's a little snippet. Sarò lì a dirti che sbagli, tu sbagli e lo sai, qui non arriva la musica e tu non dormi. So that was a little bit of Due Vite. It means 2 lives, but would you think he'll need 9 lives to win this time, Emily?
I mean, it's probably not a winner, but I think the thing about Italy in Eurovision is that they always sing in Italian, and it's such a lovely language to listen to that any kind of average ballad, I feel like, would be lifted by it being sung in Italian. So this, for me, is a really nice entry, and it sounds very much kind of like Fa Rumore back from 2020. It's kind of that similar male ballady vibe. But I can't help, I did feel a little bit disappointed listening to it. I don't know, I feel like Italy over the past kind of 6 years or so has been absolutely knocking it out of the park with their entries, and I think they've probably been in my kind of top 5 every year since Non mi
avete fatto niente.
That's the one. They have been in my top 5 probably every year since then, and this is probably the first year that they've not been in my top 5. It's I don't know, it's really tricky. I do really like it, but for me it's not kind of stand out enough.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Once if you set the bar so high for yourself consistently, even slightly below the bar becomes very disappointing very quickly. And that is even, I think this is, I mean, have you got anything else to say before I take over?
I mean, no, not hugely. I like it, but it feels a bit of a letdown.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think this is probably their weakest entry. It's good. Don't get me wrong. It is good, but this is probably their weakest entry since 2016 for me. And it's interesting that you mentioned 2018. That song closed the final, obviously. I still can't make it through without crying and getting a lump in my throat. I think it's a beautiful entry.
One of the best Eurovision entries ever.
It's one of the best. The terrorism fighting against, sort of saying you haven't done anything to me. I think honestly it is so profound, and I genuinely love it. So once you've got that, and then you've got Fa Rumore that I also can't listen to without getting a lump in my throat, because for me it's the song of the pandemic. Then they won, and then last year they had a good song that admittedly Mahmoud couldn't sing live, but anyway, we'll skirt past that. The bar is so high for Italy that this just, it doesn't live up to the reputation that they've set for themselves, which is a shame. Yeah, it's a shame. I think part of the problem is he sings it well. It's a decent ballad, but it doesn't really go anywhere. It's an interesting first 40 seconds. Then it hits the chorus. Then it comes back down, and then the second chorus is the same as the first one. It doesn't go up a notch. And then at the very end, it's the same backing track again. He just sings a little bit louder over the top of it. Like, it doesn't actually, there's no sense of progression, like it's building towards something. Whereas the comparison, I don't agree with the comparison that you made to Fa Rumore, because that did go somewhere. That started really quietly.
Yeah, I mean, it was merely a comparison of it's a ballad sung in Italian.
Yeah.
And it's by a man.
Yeah.
Fa Rumore is streaks ahead.
Far, far better than this. And that's, the more I think about it, actually, I think that could have won, that actually could have won Eurovision in 2020. I think it would have come to life. on stage. So it's a real shame that we never got to see it. This I don't see it. It's not coming top 5. You know, it really isn't. And he sings it well. It's a nice enough song, but it just doesn't go anywhere. And it's not really stand out. And I think what perhaps epitomizes the concern about it is that after he won Sanremo, and I watched Sanremo this year for the first time, and there were a few songs that were more interesting than this. There were some really, really strong songs this year. Elodie was one of them. There were a few that I still listen to now that I think were a lot more interesting than this. And yes, this still won quite handsomely. What epitomizes the problem is after he won that convincingly, he then made quite clear he wasn't sure he was going to send this. He thought he was going to send something else, and that's even he knows it's not.
Yeah, it's like if he had the doubt there around it, that just places, you know, that's indicative of, you know, how worthy he thinks it is, basically.
Yeah. The fact that I mean, I think in the final bit of Sanremo, it won about half of the vote. So it did win easily. It feels like a song very orientated towards an Italian audience rather than mass appeal. And ultimately, Sanremo, it's not the national final for Eurovision. It's a competition in its own right. And by and large, the song that wins that does go to Eurovision because they get first right of refusal. But I just think even he's not that convinced by it, which is why he thought about not sending it. Which, yeah, there you go. That probably says all you need to know. But that's our comments on it. It is obviously already into the final. We know about that. He doesn't have to worry about qualification. Italy generally finishes in the top 5, and nearly every year, this was 7 years in a row now, I think, that they finished in the top 10. Will he be emulating that sort of result? And what would you rate out of 10?
I don't know whether it'll get top 10. I kind of hope it doesn't, because for me, I'm not sure it's kind of deserving enough of top 10, but I feel like it might do, kind of due to Italy's kind of reputation at Eurovision. And it is jury friendly, you know, like you said, he does sing it really well. So I think it's kind of top 10 mid-table, probably quite easily. For me personally, it's a 7 out of 10. Which probably seems quite high considering what I've
It's a bit higher than I was expecting after your comments.
I still like it. I'd still listen to it, but just I think compared to what Italy normally sends, it feels a bit of a kind of little downer. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've said that feels a little bit high. I've given it a 6.5 because it is good. It's just not great. And Italy, pretty much every year, is at least great. So it is a bit of a letdown. I think this might squeak top 10 purely because, you know, it's the same sort of thing as with Sweden, other than Voices, which is still makes me shudder my skin off. I hate it. Fucking hate that song. Even that was the only one that in the last 10 years hasn't been top 10 for Sweden. Even when they've sent pretty meh songs, they've still ended up in the top 10 just because it's Sweden. And I think the same sort of thing applies to Italy. Even when they'll have their off year, they'll still do all right. I mean, that said, in 2014 and 2016, they didn't finish anywhere near the top 10. But coincidentally, both of those years, that song didn't win Sanremo. Every year, the winning song from Sanremo has gone to Eurovision. It's finished in the top 10.
That's some
So
good
maybe this will almost, the tradition of it means it will finish in the top 10. But I don't think, in a pretty good year, I don't think it deserves to finish in the top 10. I agree with you. So we'll see. It's going to be a close 4-1, certainly. But this is not Italy's best year by any means.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I feel about it. But that's what we think. Let us know what you think in the comments. Are you kind of a bit meh about Italy this year? Or do you love it? Tell us why you love it. We would love to hear from you. But that's it from this episode. Thanks very much for watching.